Hi, I'm April Sawtelle and welcome to my channel. Today what I'm going to be doing, I'm just going to take you through the process of how I'm making this quilt. This quilt is going to have rodents, plants, fish, and insects. One of the grandees has all of this stuff in their room on shelves. They know everything about each insect. So I thought that making this quilt with all of the tanks and jars would be very appropriate. All you're going to need for this project is a whole bunch of novelty fabric, and just sit down with me and we'll just do this together. I needed some gray. I stopped by Walmart, over to their fabric department. I have a lot of gray fabric, but I don't have anything with any little design in it. And I need some stuff for cannon jars, for quilts with cannon jars. I wanted something with a little bit of like a textured look. So I found this, and this is going to be able to be used in several different quilts with the cannon jars. Okay, let's get started. Let me just show you some of the fabrics that I have chosen for this quilt. The quilt I'm going to be working on is going to have rodents, plants, and bugs all through sitting on shelves. It's going to be kind of like the cannon jar quilt. So here I'm just going to start right off by showing you what prints I'm going to be using. So I've got some cactus, some dragonflies. I'm going to be using lots of different plants throughout this quilt as well. I'm using several different textures as well. This actually is going to be flannel. I'll be using flannels, linens, cottons, doesn't matter. I will be putting all different types of fabrics into this particular quilt. Frog fabric here, some spiders, bees. You're putting these bees in there. Somewhere there's going to be a pop of red, so we'll have a piece of that one in there. Mice. I'm going to have some more dragonflies, crabs, some chameleons, nests, and I think I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to have butterflies in my quilt as well. And I'm going to be putting in all of these different colored grass and leaves, sticks and branches. The greenery stuff is just going to make this quilt so beautiful. Right now, I'm thinking that I'm going to be cutting out some of these little rodents and bugs and mushrooms out of here in maybe the pine cones and sticking them on top of some of the greenery. I haven't decided. I'll do that as I go. I'm not positive. Love this one. This is just like, it's got, sections. I think I'll just take one whole section here and I'm going to put this into like some little jar on my quilt top. This one's Big Hosta and I love it. I just love the greenery. So again, we want this quilt's going to be quite dark, browns, blacks, greens. I'm going to have all of these tanks sitting on top of a shelf of some sort. There'll be jars and tanks. Some jellyfish. I'm going to have a tank of the jellyfish. And I also have these bees, which I absolutely love. Just more greenery. This cactus, I'm pretty sure I'll be putting this in a little jar in the quilt. I'm not 100%, just because of the white. I think it might be a little too bright, but we will see. And I love this print. This is going to be in there somewhere. I've got this piece here, and I've got this in 108 wide, and this is going to be the back into this quilt. I'm going to make this quilt approximately like 90 by 95, so it's going to be very large. The pieces I had from my own stash were, I have this lobster piece I might put in, because it's bugs and rodents, and that's going to fit perfect. I have a few pieces of that one, so that will definitely go. I had this particular piece out of an estate sale. It's just a small piece, but what I'm going to do is I cut off something from another piece. I'm going to incorporate that in somehow. So I had some panels too, and I'm just going to cut parts and pieces off panels, and I'll find a way to incorporate that greenery. I brought up some of these darker colors, solids, and I'm not sure between borders and the shelf. All of my like tanks and cannon jars are going to be sitting on shelves once I come up with all of my ideas. These are the whole colors I'm going to be working with on this quilt. I also brought this up because I might be able to incorporate this in somehow, some way. I just have it here. I'm going to play around with it. And then, of course, all of the fabrics that I did have to purchase. So let's see what we can come up with. To get started, I'm just going to make a whole bunch of 4-inch strips. And that way I have them ready as I need them. I have to get into my yardage. Boy, do I ever just love this Big Easy ruler. It holds the fabric down so well. I love using it. If you're interested in a Big Easy ruler, you can just jump on to the links below, and I will link this on the Amazon site. I'm an affiliate with Amazon, so I will get a small commission if you were to purchase anything from Amazon going through my site. So, I love this ruler. It's so good. It's Creative Grids, and it's the Big Easy. It's a 24 by 12.5 inch ruler. It's perfect for yardage. So just start out with all of your piles of whatever you're going to need. I'm going to be working with lots of 2.5 inch strips as well of the darker colored one here. It's not really black. It's like a dark brown. So I'll just cut out a bunch of those strips to have those ready as well. I'm going to be working with 1.5 inch strips of gray. So I'll cut out a bunch of those as well. So to make my cannon jars, I'll just take you through the process here. So this is a really big cannon jar. Now, you can still make this any size you want to. Not going to matter what size. In mine, you can see I have all different sizes. Some I even have on the shelf sideways. The only thing that's going to matter here is that all of your blocks end up to be the same size. Let me show you what I'm going to do. So to get started, what you're going to need is you're going to need your little corner blocks. So these are just 1.5 inches. So I'm going to lay them on my fabric just to show you. I'll lay them just like that. I'm going to sew from here to here. Now, if you want, you can just press these down in half if you need a line. Just remember, you always want to follow the inside corner. So from here to here, here to here, from here to here, from here to here. So you don't want to stay on the outside corners, okay? You want to, I'll take you over to the sewing machine and I'll show you how to do that. Now you're just going to put your corner on here and you're going to sew corner to corner. Okay, you're going to do that to all 4 sides. Now what you're going to do, you're just going to push these open. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to cut all these little corners right off. Just leaving yourself 1/4 inch here. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to trim this down a little bit. In case anything looks a little funky here, like this is sticking out a little bit. I'll just square that up right now. Then go ahead and take whatever size block you have here and lay out the same sizes along each side with my 2.5 inch piece of fabric here. And I'm going to go sew those down. I've sewn them and I'm going to give it a little press and I'm just going to push those sides right open. This one is still not looking like a jar yet. Now I want to put the lid on this. So to put the lid on, let me show you what we're going to do. I'm just going to take a measurement from here to here. That's how wide it is. So it's about 5 1/4, but I need 1/4 inch on this side and 1/4 inch on this side for the seam. It's going to put me at 5 3/4. So now I just need a piece of fabric that's going to be 5 3/4 inch wide. So there's my 5 3/4 inch. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add 2 pieces of the same color, because this is going to be your background. I'm going to add that to each side of the lid. This isn't anything that I need to measure. I'm just going to sew this on and then I'll just cut it off here. And then I'm going to sew one on this side, right sides together. And I'm going to sew 1/4 inch down each side. And I'm just going to set those seams right there. I'm going to press the seam open. I've just sewn down 1/4 inch on each side. And I'll just trim off these long pieces that I didn't need. Okay, so here is my block and here is my lids. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my lids and I'm gonna cut this one into 1.5 inches. First, I'm just gonna straighten this out just a little bit. I'm gonna cut my lid into 1.5 inch increments. Now, I won't get too many of these made up because I'm going to be making all size jars. So it's not going to matter how, this was just an easy way by putting 2 dark sides, 2 of the background fabrics to 1 actual piece of the lid. But that won't matter later because I'm going to be doing different sizes. So I might just go cut a 1.5 inch piece and add little pieces to each side. If you were going to be consistent throughout, this is a really good method to use because you can just keep cutting out your lids. Now, here's your lid. So now my lid's going to fit perfect, but now I'm going to be short on each side. Now, because I'm making so many random sizes, I have these 1.5 inch strips that I'm going to go attach to each side here. And all I'm going to do for that is I'm going to put right sides together. And I'm going to go sew that. Now you can press those seams where I just sewed those little extra pieces on. If you were working with the same consistency, you would probably be able to skip this step. I'm just showing you the way that I'm doing it because I'm making so many different sizes. And you just now want to match up, you want to match these 2 seams up to these points. So you may want to put a pin in there just to hold that together. I'm just going to take that to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew down 1/4 inch all the way down. And I'm just going to go ahead and sew this, taking my pins out as I go. Just set this seam a little bit here and push that all open. Starting to look like a jar. Now I still have a long way to go, right? Because I want it to be this size. Right now it's only this size. So how am I going to do that? Here's my cannon jar, way smaller than this one. So the only way I'm going to be able to do this is just keep building this up with this dark fabric. So what I'll do is I'll just start building. I'll start from here and go to the top. So I'm going to put a piece of fabric that big. Whatever size you need to put, I'm just going to cut a big piece, put it here, and then I can trim it down after. So if I were to keep my block at this same angle, I'm going to need from here to here, that much of the dark color. So I can just take a measurement, which is about, I'll just say 7 inches, because I'll trim that off and I need to leave seam allowance. So I'll just take a piece of the same colored fabric. I'll just cut like a 7-inch rectangle out of that. You're just gonna go and you're gonna sew right sides together and you're gonna just sew that all the way across. I've got this one to where I want it. I've got enough space here to make the same size block. And when I mean the same size block, I mean just from top to bottom. It just needs to fill in the space. So when I sew these together, this is how much room there's gonna be. Now, if you want consistency, you're going to want to follow the same all the way through. I don't want consistency. The other thing I wanted to tell you was, say I want this block to be laying on its side. I just wouldn't have put a bottom piece here, okay? I wouldn't have put that black piece there. And I would have just grew it. I would have laid this on the bottom and I would have grown it that way. I'm just going to show you this. We're going to pretend that this is the sashin I'm going to put in. So this would lay on the shelf and it would be like this. And then your jar would be going in that direction. So you'd build up from here. This would be the shelf. Now, instead, I'm going to have it go the same direction. So it's going to sit just like that. And then my shelf, when I put that in, you'll see that it's sitting on the shelf and this is what's going to be between. I'm going to trim this one down to be the same size as that one. And I'm not going to measure anything very precise. It's just going to be laying it on top of each other. And trimming. And on this side, I'm going to go ahead and trim this one up because I can see I've got all that overhang because I'm not measuring each individual piece. Now this block is done and these two would be ready to connect, and to do that all I would do is put the right sides together and sew this down at 1/4 inch. I am going to do that. I just sewed this down, give it a quick press and open up the seams. So your jars can be any size, or your tanks can be any size at all. It's not going to matter. What's going to matter is that you, from top to bottom, that they're the same. You could have this shelf be empty. So you would just fill the void in with just this background color. And then you could have an empty shelf and then maybe something way at the end, you know, just a little jar over here, way at the end of the, or the end of the shelf. It's just filling in all these voids to make sure you have the height here. And then the width, whatever width you want. All right, let me show you now. So this one here is a jellyfish tank. And all I did with these ones is I made those into rectangles. And then I just bordered it all the way around with 1.5 inch of a different color. So I added it to all the sides. The same thing I did to the jars, you just build up right from there. And it doesn't matter, like you can see this side is smaller than this side. There's a big difference there. That's just gonna give more void in my quilt. So this side's gonna be a little bit more void than this side. Now again, if you wanna have them all the same size and very symmetrical, then you're gonna wanna be very consistent. I've got all of the blocks. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start sewing them together. I brought over a bunch of 2.5 inch strips as well. That way I'll have these here just if I want to make it a little wider in between blocks. And I've got these in an order right now, how I want to lay them up. So I'm going to look at my picture. I know my layout. I'm going to start with my crabs. I've got my crab tank. I've got the bottom, so this is where the tank is actually going to sit on top of the shelf. It doesn't have any border or anything on it because that's going to be like the back of the shelf. I don't want that. I want the tank itself sitting on top of the orange shelf. So I know beside my crab tank is going to be the dragonflies. So you're always looking for the bottom not to have any, sashing or anything on it, because that's where it's going to rest right on top of your shelf. So I'm just going to lay these right sides together. I'm not going to pin this or anything. I'm just going to sew. So you just put right sides together here, line that up, and then you just start sewing. I'm going to sew at 1/4 inch. I'm going to sew all the way down. I'm going to give it a back stitch at the beginning and at the end. My 1/4 inch is a little bit bigger than a typical 1/4 inch. And I guess it's just because I have so many seams and stuff. Just want to make sure I'm catching everything. So here's my crabs with the bottom is opened of the tank. Here's my bugs, and the jar is opened because it's going to rest on the shelf. Now I'm going to add the one with the little mice. This is going to be the mice tank. I'll leave the tank part at the bottom. It has no sashing. The sashing is all going to go to the top. Now, I've kind of rearranged this order a little bit because I didn't quite like the way I had taken a picture of it. And so what's going to happen here is this may end up making me be a little bit longer, and that's okay because I can always go back and add some black if I want to make my quilt just a little bit bigger. I did make a shelf already on the first row, and I can extend that as well. Right now, because I don't really want to do all the math for this project, I just want to create my rows, and then I can readjust after I make them, look at them, and I can assess the whole situation and go from there. Because I can always add shelf, I can add black, and I can remove pieces if I need to. I can remove a whole piece and just add more black to it. So this project is not real spelled out and, specific. It's going to be as I go. I'm going to be creating this as I go, as I'm looking at each finished row. But because I don't work with patterns much, I'm kind of just making this up as I go. So it's just trial and error for me. That's how my mind works best. And I'll backstitch at the end. One thing I do know for sure is this row is not going to be able to have any extra fillers because I did add one whole piece into it from the picture. I decided to add this greenery to the top shelf, this greenery in the jar, and I did it sideways too. I didn't like it in the row that I had it, so we're going to see how that comes out. And again, I might have to make adjustments. I may have to make the top one a little bit bigger, and that's okay. Now I've got one more tank to add to this. Just make sure your tank bottom or your jar bottom is at the bottom. Now I'm going to just add my sash in. Again, right sides together. And just take your row, line it up on top of the sashin that you've created to be your shelf, right sides together, and you're going to want to back stitch at the beginning and back stitch at the end and just sew the entire row. So all the way down. Row 1, sashin, row 2, now I'm going to attach a sashin, which is the shelf. It's together and you're just going to want to sew all the way down. Back stitch at the beginning and I'll put a back stitch at the end. And create that row. The last side of the border. So I just put the sashin on the bottom, and that is actually going to complete the shelf for the bottom part. Now I'm going to put a sashin on the top, which is actually just a border now. I'm going to put a border on the top and a border on both sides. So this whole shelf is actually just going to be a border around all 4 sides when I'm done. Sides together, and now I'm going to just sew it 1/4 of an inch all the way around all 4 sides of the border. Normally I start with the 2 sides and do the top and the bottom, but this time I did the top and the bottom, and I'm going to now do both sides just because I was going in that direction. And then just press out all the seams that you just created. I ended up quilting it, and I ended up adding borders, more black borders around the whole outside. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. I'll see you next time. Remember to keep it simple. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye. Say bye, little Miss Reddy Thready.